Config. I'm Rose. I'm a designer on Instagram. I work on design systems and specialize in app-wide language patterns. They had us at the Figma office on Monday to take new headshots, and this one's kind of outdated, so I'm actually just going to update it with the new one, because I think they did a really, really good job. And she's going to come with us today. We're going to be going down a little bit of a rabbit hole, one that I went down when I was trying to fix a small craft problem, or what seemed like it, in our interface. But I promised to take us somewhere meaningful here, and I promised to leave you all with some questions you can ask yourself to understand when a product has the capacity to become load-bearing, and some considerations for all of us as design practitioners building for an online world. Before I can begin, there's three things you need to understand. The first is what a username is. A username is like a unique ID that's made up of characters. It represents an account. And you need to know what a display name is. A display name is kind of like their more custom or flexible counterpart. So for comedian Patty Harrison is her display name, and party_Harderson is her username. And the last thing you need to understand is that at Instagram, we've been using both with a little bit of inconsistency. And it was that last part that came to light for me a few years ago when I got this text from my friend John. He said, "Rose, I need you to press a few buttons while you're at work and get these bots away from me." He sent me this text with a screenshot that looked kind of like this. It was of his story viewer list getting likes from accounts that were spam. And this was a real phenomenon, by the way. Maybe you remember this moment. There were like headlines and jokes online. And there were a number of reasons why this was happening, but one of the reasons that this was happening was because our story viewer list was showing display names rather than usernames, which allowed an account with maybe a meaningless username to add capital letters or inappropriate emojis, and then when they would like your story, rise up to the top of the list, it would create spam. And this was just one of the inconsistencies in our platform, but the rest of our interface was using usernames primarily to reference users. There were just some strays out there. So this kind of landed on my desk as a craft question of how should we fix these inconsistencies? Should we just change those instances to display or to username and move on with our lives? Or should we consider a completely different naming convention, maybe showing both in certain places or even using display names but with some mitigations? Part of the reason we might even consider using display names throughout our interface is because it's what the vast majority of other account-based social platforms already do. So this is TikTok. TikTok uses display names or custom names throughout their interface to reference users. You really only see someone's username on TikTok when you go to their profile. Facebook, of course, has never really had like user-facing unique IDs like a username in their interface. Twitter uses both. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And Snapchat primarily uses custom names. So I was wondering if most accounts use both of these kind of name fields, most social media platforms, and we're using both but in different ways. And what's the meaningful difference here? What do these mean to people, and which one should we use? For me, it's the difference between being @RoseMCMS and Rose McManus. So it's like kind of like my name. Like you can see how I got there. It's like hearkening to it. And it was right around this time that I started learning French, or trying to. And I picked up the habit of trying to read French philosophy in French, which was particularly unproductive, both for learning the language and understanding the theory. But it was around this time that I picked up the book Simulations by Jean Baudrillard. Baudrillard, he's a French media theorist from the 20th century who coined these concepts around simulacra and simulation. And they really provided a modern framework for understanding how media and technology shape society. To Baudrillard, a simulation is something that replaces reality with its representation. It's a representation or an abstraction from reality. For him, that often meant an image. But for me, I was realizing that my username was kind of like a simulation of my name. Now, Baudrillard's theory unfurls in 4 steps. The first step being a representation of reality, step 0 being reality. Step 2 being kind of a distortion of that representation. And the third step being a masked absence, something that seems like it doesn't contain reality but actually still does, culminating in the fourth and final step, which he calls complete hyperreality, a stage at which something has become so simulated it no longer bears any relationship to its original form. It might even be its own original artifact now, like pumpkin spice latte coffee creamer, which contains no pumpkin. So if my username is like a simulation of my name, could this entire framework help me understand the meaningful difference between these two data fields? I thought about another example from my own life. My Gmail account that I made when I was 12 years old. My actual given name is the reality. I go by Rose. That gets nicknamed Rosie, idiomatically Rosie Posey, and that became posey910@gmail.com. And I still have this account today. So if a username can be at the end of Baudrillard's theory of simulation, then which of these data fields is more real? Which is better? Which should we use? I thought about my friend Mike. His username is MJM488, and his display name is Mike McCarty. And that's his birth name, so is that more real? That's like undeniably more real, right? I think we see this even more true in other parts of the world, places where they don't use the Latin alphabet, like in Korea, where the Korean language uses the Hangul alphabet. This is the K-pop star IU. Her Instagram handle is DLWLRMA. And I think at first, this maybe seems already like complete hyperreality, like it's bearing no relationship with her Hangul name or even with her stage name. But actually, I think this is at the third stage of Baudrillard's theory, because really DLWLRMA is Lee Ji-yoon's Hangul name typed out on a Korean keyboard, but backwards, distorted, while that keyboard is set to render Latin characters, almost like a cipher. And then her display name is her Hangul name typed out with one of the characters changed, so it's like a pun, and then her stage name, IU. And this example leverages some kind of Latinized name approximation, kind of. But we know that there are many users out there that have completely meaningless usernames that have no connection to their actual given name at all. And this happens because usernames have constraints. These are hard technical barriers that we've inherited from these being elements of the code base. For Instagram, that means you can't use things outside the Latin alphabet, but you also can't use emojis and special characters. And also, as we all know, there's zero sum, so I can't use the username Rose because someone's already taken it. So you end up with a waterfall kind of like mine. Now, these are just anecdotes that exemplify these constraints, but it turns out almost everyone does this. Like this study of Russian-speaking users on Instagram, which found that the majority of Russian-speaking users are abstracting their name in some dimension or another, whether they're introducing their profession, like photograph, or just shortening their last name, like this person. And these are pretty straightforward. Maybe these even remind you of your own usernames. But a third category in this study were actually abstracting theirs even farther with bilingual or bi-alphabet wordplay, like this example of user Nipponyaki, which is a play on their background as a scholar studying Japan in wordplay with a Latinized version of a Russian word that means slight misunderstandings. And I was wondering if this extended to other platforms, and it kind of seemed like it did. Like on WeChat, which offers more alphabet flexibility in their username structures, still, majority of users are abstracting their name or representing it with some kind of either pinyin or Western name or even personal wishes and other identity markers. And in places that are linguistically rich, like Nigeria, we see people just taking shortcuts even. This study of TikTok usernames found that 15% of Nigerian users have their actual name in their TikTok username, while 40% have some kind of authenticity marker, such as real or official, in the username. Now, to me, the straightforward irony in these kinds of authenticity conventions is that they mean almost nothing for the actual authenticity of the account. Like for my friend Sahara, who for a long time across social media platforms has had the username Aaron Carter Official, which stirred a little bit of drama when the real Aaron Carter passed away. So in this simulation, the real Aaron Carter is Aaron Carter, but the real Aaron Carter Official is actually my friend Sahara. And I was seeing what happens even when a username reaches that fourth and final stage of hyperreality. And this study found that in online forums, sometimes the username itself is nicknamed in reference to that user, like this user whose username means ghostwriter and was sometimes just called Hamu or ghost. So this reflects the fourth and final stage of hyperreality, where the original identity is less real than the simulated. And I think a great example of this complete state of simulation is the Twitter account Drill, which has gone by a number of usernames across Twitter and Instagram over the years. Right now on Instagram, he's at Drill, display name is Wint. Now, this account's identity was a secret for about 15 years until a few years ago, when it was revealed it's just run by some guy named Paul. But it's kind of too late, and it doesn't really matter, and you end up with headlines like this, where Paul or Mr. Respect or the Dean or Wint, all these things that he's gone by, are less real than his Twitter handle Drill. So Drill is as Drill gets in this hyperreal simulation. And it kind of made me wonder if usernames are even supposed to represent you at all. After all, anonymity and pseudonymity, these are really important levers online. And this study was highlighting how those levers can actually afford intentional compartmentalization of identities and the creation of these hyperreal selves. And that can allow for things like creators or personal brands, like for creator Amy France, also known as Young Kombucha 420. Whose handle has become its own creator identity to such an extent that when she switched and started using the handle Amy France, she had to make clarifications of who she actually is. You may know me as Young Kombucha 420. And there can be an attachment to these hyperreal identities. Like for my friend Tanya, whose handle Will This Make Me Happy offers a question answered by each caption of her baking-themed Instagram. And I think this type of identity creation could happen to everyone in the future if we move farther from nominally representative usernames and farther into simulation. As usernames become scarce, I wondered if it would be embarrassing even to have a username that reflects who you are, like a sign of my age. After all, overly manicured usernames can feel kind of bygone. They feel like this Tumblr era, like Web 2.0 aesthetic, evocative of like the blogosphere. Like my friend's old Tumblr here, cool stuff glows, reblogging, black leather, pink lace. To me, these feel like they served a different function online, like they're expressing a different dimension of online identity that doesn't necessarily exist anymore. And even anonymous forums like Reddit have started to introduce display names. So I was wondering if that's where Instagram should head. And there was the consideration of what these entities mean to people, but also the considerations for our interface. Could we accommodate them? Usernames can be up to 30 characters, that's already quite long, but display names can be almost twice that. So would that afford creativity? Would it cause problems? Would it create risk? Like on Twitter, where the rollout of verification divorced from name matching let accounts like Patty Harrison's tweet as if they were brands. Now, what makes this particularly easy to be misled by is not just the name free-for-all, but the specific UI mechanics where a long display name can push out the username that comes after it. So depending on your font size and phone size, you might only see a handful of characters from her Twitter username, which again is not Patty Harrison, but actually Party Hardison. So I started to wonder what the future of online identity might hold. I wondered if maybe in a zero-sum world, it would ever make sense just to hand usernames out at birth, with each new baby getting a username. I wondered if I should reserve my grandkids' handles now. Maybe they'll have names that take after me, but only if I can get my hands on those usernames. So then the username becomes hyperreal, with their given name being merely a simulation of their username. And after all of this consideration, I started to wonder what we should do in our interface to fix this problem. I went back to thinking about my original framework, where someone's name is the absolute reality. But that's when I realized I was thinking about this wrong, because your name isn't real either. It's still just a simulation attempting to depict you. Or in my case, me. No, sorry. The real me, right here. And if I'm the only thing that's real, then each of these becomes equal simulation, all just standing in for me. I think we used to imagine a separation between real and online, a difference in these worlds and spaces. But just as celebrities have done for ages, I think we've all chosen names for ourselves that are equally valid stand-ins for who we are. And just as Amy France is also known as Young Kombucha 420, Aaron Carter Official is also known as My Friend Sahara. Now, Baudrillard encouraged people to imagine a map tracing every corner of the world. He invited readers to question the implications of such a detailed, to scale representation. Is it the same thing as reality, or is it something new? And to me, the internet is like this map. I love this stock image, I think it's so funny. And a map is useful because of its ability to leave information and context behind. But I think we overlook the new information gained through the constraints of the map, new understandings of the world and behavior created by things being simulated and transformed, essentially created by the map being designed. And those new understandings and that new behavior can be hard to shake, even if it happened incidentally. Think about your phone for a moment. Does it still look like this? If not, then why do we still use this iconography? I think it's because you wouldn't recognize a rounded rectangle as meaning phone call. The product choices that we make shape the world around us and reflect back to us. When we build products, we create infrastructure that real people carry with them and ultimately build around. So can these future grooves be predicted? I went back to thinking about the bots. Maybe we could have known that this might happen. Or maybe the fact that we couldn't is a testament to creativity. But can we ask ourselves questions to help us imagine it? I think that if you're evolving new paradigms, you have to look for possibility. You have to ask yourself what behavior you're enabling that is beyond your current imagination. And what happens when this scales 10 times or 1,000 times or 3 billion times? At Instagram, I'm often humbled by the ingenuity and creativity of our users. I think when all of us as product leaders build and design for the world around us, we have to ask what people are investing in what we're building. Is it their identity? Is it their livelihood? And what paradigms are we creating for the people who haven't been born yet? We can't predict the future, but we can use our imagination and think of human constraints with a little bit of awe and respect. So once I really understood what usernames had become in our ecosystem, the decision got clearer here. And slowly, we began changing some instances back. So we kept usernames because they had already become an identity, an internet export for our users, a possibility that we couldn't have planned for. And I think when we design with these considerations in mind, we allow ourselves to be pro-possibility. And we open ourselves up to the world that we create and surrender some of the control. So at Instagram, usernames are a part of our identity, closer to who we are and our identity as part of the ecosystem that keeps growing, keeps changing, and keeps empowering creativity on the internet and in the real world. Thank you.